Are you in pain?
Not in this moment, no.
Have you been in pain?
I have, yes.
What have you done to treat your pain?
I've done a variety of things, some of them considered more alternative and some of them more traditional.
Okay. Do you want to tell me about the story of how you have begun your pain journey and what it's entailed?
It began with a great deal of discomfort and an inability to walk due to a herniated disc, a not very unusual problem in my back. And over the past 3 years, I've tripped in and out of a variety of healing modalities that have included everything that you can possibly imagine in the alternative world, from chiropractic to acupuncture to massage to different healing methods, etc. And then moving straight into the world of more allopathic perspective, so all kinds of tests and MRIs and X-rays and myelograms and EMGs, etc. And none of it's gotten me anywhere.
Wow.
And so what I finally realized, and I've had the first few weeks for me were the hardest, I thought. And over time, things have been okay and then not okay, depending on a variety of different things. Walking, not walking, being able to move, finding out motions that you think are okay and learning later that they've done some kind of damage. But all of that's shifted for me, and it shifted this just in the last few months. Just been doing a lot of different kinds of healing work, mostly inner healing work. And so there's a lot of introspection on my part and a realization after some great disappointment in the allopathic world. Not that I expected too much from them in the first place, but I was hopeful, and nothing came of it, and all the tests were done, and there was really nothing to be done. And I was grateful because I didn't want to go for surgery. And then I went home, I was terribly disappointed and upset, and then I had this experience the next day where I woke up with just a different perspective. I don't even know where it came from, except, I think I could piece it together slowly. And what it was just about, okay, you know what? You have to stop holding this pain or this discomfort in your body as your enemy. It's not your enemy. 3+ years, it's got some status. It's my roommate. We live together. So how do I want to be with that? How do I want to hold that? And it's with me all the time in various forms. But you can't, when it's there, I don't push it away and pretend it's not there. If it needs me to sit, I'll sit. If it's okay for me to be standing and doing something, I'll do it. I think one of the most fascinating things, and I mentioned this before, I lost my ability to walk again last June. I made a mistake and did some decompression traction. And I lost my ability to walk, and I went through a whole period of where my leg would buckle under me with no warning whatsoever. Wow. So I did have a little bit of a life in the city, and it became terrifying to go to the city because I never knew when I might just kind of collapse on the sidewalk. So a variety of things took me through that, and then I had this big change in this past November about making this pain, incorporating it and letting it be with me. And the next day I was walking 45 minutes and my leg has not buckled since then. And I can't say, oh, I have no pain anymore. I do, and there are a lot of things I do right now. I'm doing some Alexander technique, and I'm doing craniosacral therapy. I'm doing a little bit of chiropractic, and I'm working with an osteopath from France, which is a very different experience than American osteopathy. And so I'm doing a series of exercises, all of which it just seems like I fell on the right plan right now, the right combination of things, and I'm listening to my body, which was not something that came easily for me. Being part of the Western culture, I think for a long time I kind of separated my head from the rest of me. So it's been a fabulous journey in terms of really deepening my own sense of self-connection and getting clear about what I really need at any given moment and how I'm feeling when those needs are met versus when those needs are not met.
That's an amazing perspective to have, to be able to live with the pain and accept it and take it as it comes.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the different types of techniques that you've tried and how they've helped and how they haven't, or this combination that you have now, how it's helping.
It's a little bit hard for me because I'm doing 3, with chiropractic 4 things. I can't necessarily say, well, this is taking care of this and I can't do that. I don't know exactly what's working, but it's the combination that seems to be, which I mentioned a minute ago. What I know is true is that I'm doing very different kinds of things, and what's really important for me that goes along with that whole idea of how I live with pain or discomfort is how much I participate. So when I go to a chiropractor, or I go for Alexander, or I go for craniosacral, I'm basically having things done to me. With Alexander, what I love about it is that it's both. Judith works on me, and yet at the same time, through the things that she's taught me about Alexander, and just my being more in touch with myself, I'm participating in small assignments that she gives me. And every week when she says to me, I can see the scoliosis in your spine unfurling, it becomes my motivation just to keep going. So for some of the other things, the craniosacral work is very deep work, but basically I lie on a table and somebody's got their hands underneath my spine or at my feet or around my head or a place like that. Sometimes I walk out of there, and sometimes I'll walk out of Alexander in a great deal of discomfort. But usually by a few hours or the next day, it's resettled, which I also find really encouraging.
It's just changing.
It's moving, it's dynamic, and it's changing, which I think is good. I mean, it feels, I'd rather it be fresh and moving, and that allows me to be even more of a participant than just have it kind of there and some kind of dead weight that I can't do anything about, that all I can do is watch.
It's pain management through movement rather than stagnancy.
That's a great way of putting it, yeah.
So I'm curious, since you've been in pain for so long and you've had, pretty severe issues, were you ever given prescription pain medication?
I was given I was giving prednisone, sorry. I was given prednisone when it first started in November of 2009, and it didn't touch it. Didn't really do a thing. And then I did my first epidural, which actually really gave me a lot of relief. I mean, it really, really made a difference. I followed it with a second and a third that did nothing. I did a facet joint injection that did nothing. And then I did another epidural. I went back to the first doctor I'd gone to, the one where the epidural had been successful. And I actually think that was when I got worse, was when I had the epidural that I had last February.
Wow. What do you think it was about that
made it worse?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. All I know is I can look back and say, because up until then I was fairly ambulatory and getting around and, taking 2-3 mile walks without too much difficulty. I mean, I had stopped being able to bend a lot. I'd lost my ability to lift a lot, but I was still mobile. And all of a sudden, after that shot, I was less mobile. And then I made the mistake I mentioned before of going for decompression traction, kind of in a, for some people it had worked, and whatever it did, it was not good. So that period from February through June, I just was the worst it had been since the very beginning.
I'm curious, since, you did try these narcotic pain medications and epidurals.
I did oxycodone too at some point.
And they didn't seem to work for you.
Nope.
You've found so many alternatives and you've tried so many other things, and so many people don't take that step to do that. They just say, oh, like, these drugs are the only option that I have.
Or the surgery. Right?
Yeah. What made you go out and search for these other options?
Probably because I've been more in tune to that world since maybe in 1984, 85. I was diagnosed with a thyroid condition many, many years ago and told I had to take some pill for the rest of my life. And I said, the rest of my life? I didn't get married and I didn't have kids, so I didn't have to do the rest of my life. And you're telling me I had to take a pill? So that started me curiously about herbs and about homeopathy, both of which I've studied and stayed very close to. And then everything else that came my way, I just learned as much about as possible. To me, there's always an alternative. You can always do the drugs. You can always do the surgery. But to me, those are the last choices. When you're absolutely out of options, that's where you can turn. But if you have a chance of enhancing your own well-being by making choices that are far more gentle, to yourself, why wouldn't you? Yes, it takes more time. Yes, it takes more patience. Yes, it's not necessarily fast acting, and you may not get the relief you want immediately. But in the long run, it's an investment in yourself. At least that's what it's been for me.
How has pain affected your daily life over the past few years?
It really has, and there's a two-prong answer. I mean, the reality of the way it's affected it is in things I mentioned a minute ago, bending and lifting and things like that. There are things I can't sit on the floor anymore for any period of time. I can sit on the floor, but it's getting up and then trying to straighten out. That's really, really hard. Lifting things out of the car, reaching far over my head, bending freely. I can't garden the way I used to, although I think that may be changing this year because I'm getting much, much stronger and much more able to squat for longer periods of time. But I lost track of what I was going to say about the second prong. But what I know. I just believe that things happen the way we need them to. And people have been showing up in my life for the last 3 years. I have someone living on my property now who's a dear friend who needed a place to stay. So if I need my cat litter changed or I need groceries brought in or something major that I can't handle, he does that. And I have other friends that are always available to help. And I've learned, and it's by far the hardest journey for a lot of us, especially women, I think, is how to ask for help. So it's been pretty manageable from that perspective, but I'm celebrating the fact that I'm able to do things now that 3 or 4 months ago there was no way I could have done them.
That's a huge improvement for you.
Yeah. I just feel stronger.
That's great.
Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, before these 3 months, how would you say your pain was, and now, how would you say it is?
Well, it's a little tough to answer, honestly, Lily, because the pain has always been intermittent for me. There's never been a constant. The only thing that has been constant, and it's only just now beginning to change for the first time, is when I get up in the morning, about 20 minutes after I'm actually up, I have a lot of discomfort on my right leg. I mean, it's just huge, from my hip to my groin, down my leg, etc. It's really tough. And the best thing that I can do is sit down. What I've been doing lately is rebounding, just bouncing on a trampoline, not jumping, just bouncing for 2 minutes, and then doing 2 of the osteopathic exercises that I mentioned. And for the first time in 3 years, I'm feeling a difference in that morning time. The rest of the day for me can be almost totally pain-free. For the most part, it revisits me throughout the day. When I do a workshop, the workshops I do at the prison are 4 hours Thursday night, 12 hours on Friday, 12 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday. Wow. And you can imagine the chairs are not exactly the easiest.
That's a really long
Plus 2 hours traveling each way.
So how do you manage your pain in work? It must have affected how you are able to work there.
Well, it did for a while. I mean, it made it a little dicey. But as I've gotten stronger, it's actually gotten easier. And again, I get tremendous care from the men. I mean, just tremendous care, because they would give anything to be able to be in the outside world and show people that they know how to care. So I benefit from that experience, from that kind of attention. They watch me very carefully. And for me, it's like I'm so purpose-driven when it comes to the work that I'm doing, that I'm distracted enough that even if I'm twitching or whatever, or something's doing whatever it's doing, it'll go away eventually. It'll do what it needs to do.
And you just want to say quickly what you do just so we have that.
I'm a conflict resolution specialist. I work under a program called the Alternatives to Violence Project, and I do most of my work in a men's maximum security prison called Eastern Correctional Facility in Napanoch, New York. And we do 3-day intensive workshops in 3 different levels, and we have every Thursday night support training groups for everybody.
Well, it seems like the support is going both ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got it right. Absolutely. That's why I keep showing up.
Great.
Thanks.
So do you feel like your pain has kind of affected your relationships or how you go about presenting yourself? Or
That's a great question. I think there was a time where I was in danger of affecting my relationships adversely. I was getting so bored hearing myself, how much I talked about it. I was talking about it all the time. It was like all I could talk about. And I was tired of hearing it. So I figured a lot of other people must have been tired of hearing it by then. So now, ever since then, it hasn't been my experience. I don't, obviously, specifically, I'm talking about it for a reason right now. I don't tend to bring it up much anymore. It's just gotten a whole different status in in my way of being. Not that it has less importance, it doesn't. It has tremendous importance. But it doesn't have that crying need for attention that it used to have. And so I don't either.
That's a really great perspective on it.
It's a great blessing. I'm not quite sure how all of it happened, but I am extremely grateful.
Well, obviously it came in time, too.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't immediate.
No, it was, yeah.
So, do you have any specific moments or periods of pain that really stick out for you, and how you got through them?
By far, I think the first 6 weeks for me when I couldn't walk at all were really big. And then, this is not a direct answer to what you're asking, but I think it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a piece for me where I think that I've actually had pain that's been as bad or worse than that pain was the first 6 weeks. Hmm. But I think time helps a lot. And I think what's missing now that was so present at the beginning was the fear is gone. I mean, at the beginning, when all of a sudden you can't move and you're in so much pain, you're terrified that if you make one wrong move, something's going to happen. Or you're going to, people say, my back went out, or whatever the expressions are. I was scared to death. I think I've been in worse pain, but because I'm not carrying the fear any longer, it just doesn't have that effect on me. And I move through it with care and with attention. But because there's less fear, there's a lot more ease that goes with it as well. And so, like I said, that worst patch for me is usually in the morning, but there are times, like after the workshop weekends, I need a good cushion, firm enough but soft enough at the same time. Yeah, or I need my bed, one of the two. Yeah.
So do you have anything you want to say about pain or about pain management or about being someone who's in pain or about being people who are dealing with loved ones who are in pain, that you kind of come to through your journey that you want people to hear and know?
I think the word that comes up for me right away is the word patience. And ironically enough, it's a word that I learn in prison all the time because I know the word, but I don't know the meaning of it, except through the men. And now I do myself because of what I've watched them with. But I know that if it would have been really easy for me when I met with these surgeons at the beginning and they were like, we got it, come on in, we'll take care of it 5 minutes, we'll do this, we'll put this screw here, we'll fuse that in it. And if I could not have moved away from the pain in that moment, so I was smart enough to go and talk to a couple of other people, I would have gone for that surgery. And chances are it would have not helped me at all. It would have been in the wrong place. It was really scary. So I guess what I would want people to know is I know that pain can be really, really, really hard. And that if you're living a lifestyle where you have kids and you're working and God knows what else, then it's extra hard. But if there's any way that you can find the time to give yourself the space and look at some of the alternatives that are out there, there's a real opportunity for a different kind of healing that's much more sustaining and life-giving and life-supporting than running for the quick pill or the surgery. At least that's my opinion. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
And I guess kind of my last question, unless they have more, is what's the bright side to it? Like, what gets you through? Like, what's the happiness on the other side, I guess?
I'm not quite sure how you mean that, but I guess for me, it's no different than what the rest of my life has become, and I guess in a lot of ways I have the time of the discomfort to thank for this. There's a long period of time where I wasn't very mobile. I live in a beautiful piece of property, and we live in one of the most beautiful areas of the world as far as I'm concerned. And my need for beauty is enormous. And when I couldn't move, I could have buried my head somewhere, but I just kept watching what was around me. The seasons change. A little layer of ice, from fallen snow one evening 2 mornings ago, coming out at 7:20 in the morning and just looking at the crystal. And that's what saved me more than anything. Just connecting to something larger than myself. Yeah. Beauty, there's nothing like it, and it's findable in so many different ways and so many different sources. So there's a willingness involved here, a willingness to move beyond and to recognize that what's going on, may be happening for you, and there may be, there's of course obviously a huge personal aspect to it, but for me the biggest part was being able to say, okay, this is here. And as one of my teachers in nonviolent communication very wisely said to me as I sat crying my head off to him in October about, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to do stuff again and live with this. And he said to me, can you just be with it right now? Which of course is always the question. Can you just stay present with what is? And I said to him, there's a part of me that's afraid that if I actually say, yes, it's okay, I can live with it right now, that I'll be like almost betraying a part of myself for not trying as hard as I can to make it better, to make it the best it could be. And he looked at me and he said, I'm talking about acceptance. I'm not talking about resignation. And those words have been really, really key for me. So work with the acceptance piece, but don't ever resign yourself if it's not what you want.